waiting for Thomas Roman to show himself. Now it was the path traversed by Kill Team Victory, only moving in the opposite direction, as they left the vault to free up the embattled Republic engineers and hopefully take out the Gomari slave ship and its powerful guns. A Legionnaire's bucket broke the swamp's surface and ran a perimeter scan before dropping back into the mire. Pina, the scout, spied a single G squad that lay against a berm on a downslope beside the pond, oblivious to the fact that hostiles could hit them from behind. They were apparently unaware of the underwater back door through the murky swamp, and assumed, not without reason, that no army would make the trip across those deep and penetrating bayous. "Team of G engaging unknown element," Pina reported to the others still submerged and waiting beneath him. "They're doing a pretty good job, coordinating fire positions, supplying suppressive fire, while a swing element is hitting whoever they're shooting at from the flanks of either side of the hill curving back toward the slope." The Legionnaire sent visuals of what he was seeing to coincide with his report. "Move to make the hit," Bombassa ordered from the depths, breathing easily inside his sealed helmet like all the other Legionnaires. Several additional buckets crested the water and swam in a silent wedge toward the line of donks holding the hill. There were 10 targets in all, 6 firing from the hill and 4 working as a mobile rifle team. Bombassa pushed a countdown timer in the team's HUD to coordinate their actions. The countdowns hit 0, and as one, the Legions each sent a single shot into the back of their assigned donk's head. 6 G on the hill dead, only the mobile rifle team remaining. Pina peeled off to the side of the hill where he could get a clear line of sight to the 4 remaining G. With a fresh charge drum locked into his automatic blaster, he sent multiple controlled bursts from the weapon, gunning down the donk fighters with each salvo of 3 to 5 bolts. The G team slumped into the murky, diseased undergrowth common to this side of the mountain. 4 EKIAs, hill clear. Confident they had secured their side of the hill, Bombassa called into the company frequency he'd used to make contact with the engineers a few hours before. "Any station this net. This is Legion Element Victory 7. Victory 7, this is Bravo 3. We're defending against squad plus G fighters with Gomari handlers. I'm tagging you our loc. Over." This was the same Lieutenant Bombassa had made contact with previously, the one running the platoon on the outer cordon. "I see your grid. We're backside of the hill. 7 men moving to you. Over." "Thank Oba. I copy 7 men. Come to us." Kill Team Victory moved hastily around the hill, still dripping from their swim through the dank swamps. They found tired, harried, and haggard-looking Repub Army engineers waiting for them, rifles relaxed but still ready. The soldiers showed visible relief upon seeing the Legionnaires. A Repub sergeant came forward and led the kill team through their defenses to the lieutenant. The engineer platoon had heavily entrenched themselves along a winding ridge that overlooked the low ground where the ponds collected at the start of the great swamp glades. The sergeant stopped at the base of the ridge, preferring to stay with his men in their dugout positions below. From above, the lieutenant motioned the Legionnaires to climb, making room for them to work themselves into the fighting positions. "You guys sure can dig," Pina said. The fighting positions were ample, almost roomy given the time that had passed. "Kind of our thing, Liege," the lieutenant replied. He gestured toward the G positions. "We're getting hammered out here. The last group through put a blanket of bolts on us and then dropped off that squad you took out before running for it." "Ran off, huh?" Nobes said. "Why haven't they just committed to rolling you guys up?" "I think they just want to keep us here. Bulk of the force is working on getting our equipment up and running. They want inside that cave we were trying to dig you out of." "Tell me more about that force," Bombassa said. "Numbers, positions, species, whatever you've observed." The engineer shook his head. "We haven't had much time to get a good look. I sent 2 scouts, and neither of them made it back. What we've seen so far is mostly G and Gomari. No idea on numbers. Guess it depends on whether that slave ship they parked down there was full of slaves or soldiers. I can't get eyes close enough to say. They have the other side of this ridge locked down. You stick your head out at the high risk of not keeping it attached." "Understood." Bombassa looked around at his men. He could feel the glares radiating through the helmets. Big Brother wasn't taking too kindly to how the enemy had treated the engineers. The team leader went to his LCOM after excusing himself to the lieutenant for a moment. "Team, objectives are going to be harder to achieve if they realize the engineers can push out of containment. Suggestions for recovering the shovels and maintaining the surprise we need? Nobes, the team intelligence sergeant and second stripe, said, "This ridge is gonna be a nightmare to climb, but I think there's an answer if we can do it." The Legionnaires looked up the steep mountain ridge. The spine was a razor's edge with scant holds on either side, but it wasn't difficult for the other Legions to see what Nobes was thinking. They could climb on the opposite side of the ridge out of sight of the Gomari until they reached a copse of forested trees high up. Using that for concealment, they could then work themselves across and down an equally steep ridge which would allow them to descend undetected right into the valley near the slave ship. "You're saying we can make the climb and double back to get in close to the Gomari operations outside the cave," Bombassa said. "That's right, Top. If we leave Nix and Wello, they can work with the shovels to drop some G once we're in position. We can support from the ridge as needed, but use the initial confusion of the battle to make our primary." Nix popped his finger knuckles with his thumb. "About time we get a bit of payback for Neck. I figured 10 of theirs for every one of ours ought to do it." "Fine," Bombassa said. 2 men down shouldn't prevent us from proceeding with the plan. Anything else?" There was nothing further. Bombassa gave a curt, fractional nod. "Don't forget nothing. Always make 'em pay," Nix responded, and then, along with Wello, filled the engineer lieutenant in on what the kill team was going to attempt. The rest climbed. A grueling, painful ascent that tested the limits of their Legion training. Though they moved hidden by the spine of the ridge from most of the hostiles, they nevertheless moved slowly and deliberately, not relying solely on their mimetic camouflage to keep them unseen from any spotters or snipers. It took 3 hours to reach the copse of thick trees 900 meters above where they had started. "Okay, this is high enough," Bombassa announced, breathless but sounding strong. "Nobes, get us a new fix on what's below." The intelligence sergeant went to the edge of the alpine tree line while the rest of the team recovered. "Think any donks ever made this climb?" Pina asked. "Hell no," Doc Chance answered. "I'm barely hacking it." Nobes came back with his report. "Bad news. There's too many G down there for the shovels to break out, even with Nix and Wello helping. We'd have to send some men back down to provide enough firepower to achieve a breakthrough." "We split the team and we might not be able to achieve our primary, much less storm the slave ship," Pina said. "Yeah," agreed Toots. "Maybe we just need to tell Nix and Wello to adjust. Have them help the shovels keep from getting overrun in case the donks try to roll them once we get on board and blow the ship." There was an unspoken and grim reality underlying that suggestion. The kill team fully intended to both take out the drilling team and blow the slave ship, but without the shovels on hand to engage the Gomari and G hostiles in the area, the odds of escape weren't great. Bombassa had been monitoring the observation data Nobes had recorded from the ridge. "Maybe we don't need to board the ship," he said. "I think I see a way we can shut down the PDCs from outside, even with half a team." He quickly outlined a plan. Instead of destroying the mining lasers and heavy equipment, he proposed sending in a small team to take possession of it and use it against the slave ship. It might work if the shovels and remaining Dark Ops leeches could break out and draw fire away from them. "Yeah," Nobes said, his enthusiasm growing as he repeated the word. "Yeah. We get that mining laser and some free time, we can slag the PDCs enough to clear the skies for an airborne insertion." "I like it," Pina added. "Who knows what kind of defenses might be inside the ship anyway? Remember that Gomari boat KT Reza helped the hullbusters take down a couple years back? Place was like an ambush funhouse." "Sounds like we have our adjustment decided," Bombassa said. He split the team into 2 and sent one half to position themselves as they saw best in order to help facilitate the engineers' breakout. "If and when you can, move toward KP to assist with our exfil," he instructed them. KP was what the team had taken to calling the backdoor waterway, short for the original nickname Kiddie Pool. As half of his kill team made preparations to assist Nix, Wello, and the shovels, Bombassa led the other half into the next phase of the new plan. They filtered through the trees, moving along a saddle that sat behind the second ridge. This path was less visually obscured, but their camouflage was sufficient to hide them until they descended into the inky canopy of sap-soaked trees and skeletal vines that would lead out to the flat earth where the slave ship had landed before the cave entrance. There they paused to take in additional information from their up-close view, chief of which was a clearer picture of the Gomari slave ship. The thing was huge, easily the length of a seamball stadium, and had crushed an expansive level of the tall black forest to make its landing. It was smooth in spaces and rough in others, as if two design teams had compromised on the hull and just built their different sections to fit. But the one design element no one could fault was its firepower. Its railguns, orbital lasers, and missile batteries were a defensive team's worst nightmare. They were relatively few in number, but powerful enough to destroy entire city blocks from any altitude. You didn't need a lot of those to make life short for any featherheads trying to land in the vicinity. The cost to any reinforcements attempting an airborne insertion would be painfully high, and as Cal Turner had said, the day of days would go a whole lot better if Kill Team Victory could clear the way for additional support, though exactly who or what that would be was still elusive. Nobes gave a whistle. Seeing it all from here really makes you appreciate what that artillery strike Mac Raven called in did for his team. Must have killed a few entire tribes worth of dogs. He sent a burst of what he captured with his helmet to the other men in his kill team. Spread before him were stacks of dead G filling the swampy terrain leading away from the cave. This was exactly where Task Unit Zombie and Sergeant Major Mac Raven had trapped the advancing G in a brutal pounding of artillery between the long run to the swamps beyond the cave and the incline of the mountain. Mac made 'em pay, Pina said. Mombasa shared the assessment but didn't say so. His mind was on other things. I want to know if they have prisoners, he urged. The engineers were hit and split up. What we saw on the way up isn't all that was sent to dig masters out. After a few moments of scanning, Pina announced, "You've called it top." He shared his bucket's feed. Captured members of Bravo Company stood in a makeshift paddock of poles projecting an invisible energy fence that was nonetheless visible in the Legionnaires' HUD. The Republic troopers languished under the watchful eye of a squad of Gomari. A blue-skinned commander in gray and red armor pointed to one of the prisoners, barking an order that the bucket couldn't pick up at such long range. Don't like the looks of that, Nobes murmured. The prisoner was taken and presented for inspection. The Gomari commander slathered its mouth tendrils over the engineer's face and then ordered him stripped naked. An inner chain collar was placed around his neck, and the captive was slathered by the large commander's wet mouth tendrils as he tasted the difference in emotions. Should have gone to war with the Blues as soon as we learned what happened on her beer, Toots growled. Keep focus, Bombassa ordered. He converted the scene in front of them into a map on his battleboard, then marked it up with assignments for everyone on the team, updating the plan as the situation developed. Clipping the board onto the front of his armor, he then slithered forward to go over the higher ridgeline. Okay, time to head back down. Dig a hole, fill it up, Doc Jantz grumbled as he followed Bombassa over the top and down the opposite side of the ridge, which would bring them up close with their target as it led out by the swamps. Much closer than they could have hoped to have gotten by running across the open terrain or enemy-facing ridgelines initially available to them. Moving down, Bombassa told the rest of his team. The climb down went much faster than the climb up, though the steepness of the slope made the descent feel that much more dangerous. Their heels. Bombassa was glad for the erratic terrain. Combined with their mimetic ammo, the upturned slope provided plenty of opportunity for a stealth approach. And the farther they moved, the more aware Bombassa was of the